You open your banking app before you're even out of bed. Same habits as always. But this morning the number looks wrong. Overnight, while you were asleep, your investments paid you more than your job paid you yesterday. No lottery ticket. No inheritance. No overnight windfall. Just a line quietly crossing another line. The way it does for anyone who keeps feeding it long enough. This moment has a name. Vicky Robin and Joe Dominguez called it the crossover point in their book, Your Money or Your Life. The exact moment your investment income overtakes your working income permanently for the rest of your life. Most people have never heard the term. Fewer still believe it applies to them. But the math doesn't care what you believe. So let's walk through what actually happens when you reach it. For years, your paycheck was the whole story. It arrived every 2 weeks. You spent most of it, and whatever was left over went into an account you barely watched. Small numbers, boring numbers, numbers that felt too slow to matter. But money left alone doesn't stay the same size. It multiplies quietly in the background, the same way a snowball grows as it rolls downhill. Slow at the top, unstoppable near the bottom. John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, spent his entire career trying to get ordinary people to understand this one idea. You don't need to beat the market. You just need to stay in it long enough for growth to compound on top of itself, year after year, without you doing anything at all. Here's the part that surprises people. Compounding isn't dramatic at first. It's almost insulting how slow it looks in year 1, year 3, even year 7. Then somewhere past the decade mark, the curve stops looking like a line and starts looking like a hockey stick. That's not luck. That's math finally catching up to patience. Picture two people who work the exact same job, earn the exact same salary for the exact same 20 years. One of them spends everything. New car every few years. Dinners out. Upgrades that feel necessary at the time. By year 20, their net worth is close to zero, and every dollar of their income still comes from one place: their employer. The other person quietly invests a fixed percentage of every paycheck into low-cost index funds. The same boring, unglamorous strategy Burton Malkiel described in A Random Walk Down Wall Street decades ago. They don't pick stocks. They don't chase trends. They just buy, hold, and let time do what time does. By year 20, that second person isn't just wealthier. Their portfolio has started generating more income in a single year than their salary does. Dividends, interest, growth, all arriving whether they show up to work or not. Put real numbers on it for a second. A portfolio of $600,000, growing at a historical stock market average of around 7% after inflation, generates roughly $42,000 in a single year without a single new contribution. If that person's salary is $40,000, the crossover has already happened, quietly, probably before they even checked. They didn't get a promotion. They didn't switch careers. Their money simply got large enough to out-earn them on its own. Why doesn't everyone do this? Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize-winning economist behind modern behavioral finance, spent decades studying exactly this question. His answer is uncomfortable. Humans are wired for present bias. We consistently value a dollar today far more than a dollar tomorrow, even when tomorrow's dollar is worth objectively more. Thaler's research helped redesign retirement systems around this flaw, building automatic 401k enrollment because he knew most people would never opt in on their own. Not because they're careless, because delayed reward is genuinely hard for a human brain to feel. And here's the twist almost nobody expects. The people who reach the crossover point fastest are rarely the highest earners. They're the most consistent ones. A doctor earning $300,000 a year, who spends nearly all of it, will take longer to reach crossover than a teacher earning $60,000, who invests aggressively and never stops. Income determines how much you could invest. Behavior determines whether you actually do. There's a name for the force working against both of them. Economists call it lifestyle inflation, the tendency for spending to rise automatically with income. So a raise disappears into a nicer apartment or a nicer car before it ever reaches an investment account. Thaler's work on mental accounting explains why this happens almost invisibly. People treat a raise as new money to spend rather than old income, just more of it. So the gap between what they earn and what they invest never actually widens, no matter how many promotions arrive. Closing that gap on purpose, even by a few percentage points a year, is the single biggest lever most people have and never pull. So what does life on the other side of that line actually feel like? It's not a mansion. It's not a private jet. Mostly, it's quiet. You still might go to work. Plenty of people who reach crossover keep working, because now they're choosing it instead of needing it. That distinction changes everything. A hard conversation with a manager stops feeling like a threat to your survival. A bad quarter at the company stops feeling like a personal emergency. You start making decisions from a position of options instead of fear. Some people call this financial independence. Others call it Coast FI or Lean FI, depending on how far past the line they've gone. The label matters less than the mechanism underneath it. Your money is finally working as many hours as you are. And eventually, more. There's a psychological shift that happens too. One that even surprises the people going through it. Daniel Kahneman's research on loss aversion showed that humans feel the pain of losing money roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. Before crossover, every market dip feels like a threat to your paycheck's replacement. After crossover, something changes. A downturn stops feeling like an emergency and starts feeling like a sale, because you've internalized that the line only moves one direction over long enough time, even if the path there is jagged. Financial planner William Bengen put a number on how much of that portfolio you can actually spend once you're living off it. His research, published in 1994 and still widely used today, found that withdrawing around 4% of a portfolio in the first year, then adjusting for inflation after that, has historically let the money last 30 years or longer without running out. It's not a promise. Markets don't sign promises, but it's the closest thing the crossover point has to an instruction manual. A rough answer to the question everyone eventually asks once the number in their account starts outpacing their paycheck. How much of this can I actually use? Now here's where most people get the math wrong, and it costs them years. They assume crossover requires a small fortune. It doesn't. It requires two much simpler things: a savings rate you can actually sustain, and enough time for that rate to compound. A 25-year-old investing $400 a month into a diversified index fund, averaging historical market returns, can realistically cross their own salary line before they turn 50 without ever getting a raise. A person who starts at 40 needs a higher rate to get there by the same age. But the mechanism is identical. There is no secret account the wealthy have access to that you don't. There's only time, consistency, and the discipline to leave the snowball alone while it rolls. The 2008 financial crisis is the case study people forget to mention. Millions of investors panicked, sold at the bottom, and locked in their losses permanently. The ones who did nothing, who kept contributing through the crash out of habit, not confidence, watched their portfolios not just recover, but multiply over the following decade. The line didn't care about the panic. It only cared about who stayed in the game. So think about your own numbers for a second. Not someone else's salary, not someone else's stock picks. Just the percentage of your own income. that's currently going toward your future self versus the percentage funding a version of comfort you'll forget about in a month. That percentage is the entire story. It's the difference between a career that owns your time indefinitely and a portfolio that eventually pays you to reclaim it. You open your banking app before you're even out of bed. One day, the number won't just look different. It'll mean something different. The day your money finally starts paying you more than your job does, whether you get out of bed for it or not.